I am a futurist. I'm not a perfect predictor of the future, but I'll give you my 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. So focusing in the world of wearable technology as opposed to implanted technology. And I do believe that within many of our lifetimes, we'll see healthy people using implanted brain technology as well. Then we can decode complex thought. But wearable brain technology, I think in 1 year, we will be largely where we are now, but with much better form factor technology. So many companies are launching these earbuds and headphones this year that have sensors that are built in. One of the things that has limited the widespread adoption of the technology until now has been that you have to wear something like across your forehead. Most of us aren't going to do that. But when it's the same device that you're using to take calls from and also to listen to music from that also is picking up brainwave activity, it's integrated into your everyday life. Because of that, the decoding will largely be in the same place a year from now, but as healthy people in a widespread way start to have their brainwave data collected, the insights that we can gain through pattern recognition will exponentially increase and pretty quickly. So 5 years from now, what we can actually decode will be massively increased from where we are today, simply because we'll have a much greater data set from which we can actually create those correlations. The newest way to monitor attention is through a device like this one. These are ear pods that are launching later this year. These ear pods, much like the video you watched earlier, are ear pods that can pick up brainwave activity and tell whether or not a person is paying attention or their mind is wandering. Okay, well, you might think, fine, but even if we can tell whether a person is paying attention or their mind is wandering, you can't tell what they're paying attention to. You would be wrong. It turns out that you can not only tell whether a person is paying attention or their mind is wandering, but you can discriminate between the kinds of things that they're paying attention to. Whether they're doing something like central tasks, like programming, peripheral tasks, like writing documentation, or unrelated tasks, like surfing social media or online browsing. When you combine brainwave activity together with other forms of software and surveillance technology, the power becomes quite precise, because major tech companies are investing in helping to make these devices universally applicable as the way in which we interact with the rest of our technology. In fact, the coming future, and I mean near-term future, is these devices being the primary way in which we interact with all of the rest of our technology. Rather than a mouse or a keyboard, you can simply swipe with your mind. Move your hand more seamlessly when you're in VR or AR. Use your brain as the way in which you interact with all of the rest of your technology, which is an exciting and promising future, but also a potentially scary one, a transformative one, one that will change the way that we interact with other people and even how we understand ourselves.
Neural interfaces, when they work right, and we still have a lot of work to go here, feel like magic.
So if you send a control to your muscle saying, I want to move my finger, it starts in your brain, it goes down your spine through motor neurons, and this is an electrical signal. So you should be able to grab that electrical signal on the muscle and say, oh, okay, the user wants to move their finger.
What is it like to feel like pushing a button without actually pushing it? That could be as simple as, hey, I just want to move this cursor up or move it left. Well, normally I would do that by actually moving. But here, you're able to move that cursor left. And it's because you and a machine agreed which neurons mean left and which neurons mean right. You're in this constant conversation with the machine.
This new form of control, it requires us to build an interface that adapts to you and your environment.
How many of you wear something like an Apple Watch? Fitbit, smart device? Yeah, many people. It's a many billion-dollar company. I mean, many billion-dollar industry at this point. Wearable devices, quantifiable self is just a widespread movement. Most people are very comfortable with at least some forms of human quantification. In fact, it's become so widespread that most people feel like there's not that much to worry about when it comes to doing something like monitoring your heart rate. 10 years from now, even wearable technology, I don't think is going to decode complex thoughts, but it is going to decode a lot more. And already, gamers have figured out, for example, while a person is wearing a headset, how to prime a person through their brainwave activity to be able to decode their PIN number and their home address. So you don't have to have your full complex thought decoded. to reveal your thoughts, right? It gets at what we think thought is. In some ways and in some contexts, surveillance of the human brain can be powerful, helpful, useful, transform the workplace and make our lives better. It also has a dystopian possibility of being used to exploit and bring to the surface our most secret self. It threatens fundamentally what our own self-identity is in some ways, and threatens to become a tool of oppression. So you have recognition memory signals that are preconscious and subconscious, and this is part of why it's been used, for example, by governments to interrogate criminals. Do you recognize this potential co-conspirator? Do you recognize this murder weapon? Those preconscious signals, like what we call the P300 wave or the N400 wave, these are before you even consciously process information, so you could prime it with a number and then see if a person recognizes it. And you can do it without them realizing that that's what you're doing. What if everywhere has ubiquitous monitoring? In fact, during the pandemic, what we found was that 80% of companies admitted that they use at least some forms of so-called bossware technology to monitor the productivity of their employees. Whether it's a white-collar employee monitoring what's on their screen, or in any other context, surveillance is part of our everyday lives. Surveillance for productivity is part of what has become the norm in the workplace. We can't decode speech, and we may never decode full thoughts from the brain using simple wearable devices. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot we can already decode. There isn't a lot that we will not be able to decode in the coming days. As AI becomes more powerful, as the sensors become more powerful, more and more of what's in the brain will become transparent.